Time to go back to the Republic of Ireland's 1-0 defeat against Ukraine last night. Dion Fanning is with us. Dion, good morning to you.
Hi Ger, how are you?
What's going on? What is happening to us? Why is this happening to us? Why are we stuck in Groundhog Day?
How long have we got?
I don't know. Forever, it seems like.
Yeah, if we're stuck in Groundhog Day, I suppose we have got forever. I think there are, look, the problem with the Ireland team, or the problem with discussing the Ireland team, is you do tend to go over all the same ground. And when you have a manager like Stephen Kenny who is trying to do something different, it makes it there is another line of attack, if you like, in terms of, like, are we doing something that we're just simply not good enough to do? And when you have results like Saturday and when you have results like last night, it gets exhausting trying to kind of make a case or to kind of believe in what Stephen Kenny's saying when he talks about we're working towards a plan or a progressive plan or anything like that, when the evidence on a night like that is very hard to glimpse that. It's very hard to say, right, there's any real sign. Against that, Ireland had come into it with some evidence that things were actually going, were moving forward. And I think there is some, there has been glimpses of what Stephen Kenny wants to do. I don't know if Stephen Kenny will be the person to actually get Ireland to that position, but I think whoever is the manager, whether it's Stephen Kenny or somebody else, the approach in general has to be along these lines, because I did see people saying they would rather watch Ireland under Stephen Kenny even on a night like that rather than some of the previous managers' performances. I'm not sure. I felt the same watching it last night, but in general, that's something I would subscribe to. But I don't think you could make much of a case last night that it was entertainment or there was something progressive happening. And I think the same is true of Armenia. They're two very disappointing results with performances that have lacked a real purpose and a real sense that the team knew what they're doing. I think to say that Ireland started well, everybody starts, like lots of teams start well. It's kind of, it's when you move beyond that initial 5, 10, 15-minute spell of kind of adrenaline and energy that you actually often get to see what really a team is, what their plans are based on. And again, last night, there wasn't a lot.
That's the problem, really, is that we all were like, oh, Kenny needs time to implement something. It's a significant enough deviation from where we've been for a long time, and we're going to have to judge him when he has had a run of games, everybody's available for him, and it's the start of something new. There's no pressure on, and that was these games. That's this run of games where it's like, judge me on this. I have high expectations. I think we can win this group, is the message that he sent out there into the universe. And so we do have to judge him on these performances, and the performances are really bad.
They have been really bad, yeah. And he did, I think that's all reasonable. I think it's, if you go into it expecting or talking up, and I think Stephen Kenny had no option but really to talk it up, because he's sort of trapped between the past and the future, if you like, because, we saw how badly he reacted to kind of people bringing up the previous Nations League, which was a legitimate avenue for people to bring up. But it's then you really can stress the present, and I think there was enough in an awful lot of the games to get people excited. Since then, but you have to kind of talk up the future, and then when the future arrives, it's not as promising or as exciting as we've been led to believe. So it is going to be disappointing. It is going to be. I don't think there's any I think talking about Stephen Kenny in terms of, is he the right man for the job at this point, there's no point to that. I think he is the manager, and I think that's the right thing to do. I think you have to be. I don't think there's any solution out there that would justify getting rid of him. That's the thing. I think you as I said, I think whether it's Stephen Kenny or somebody else, I think this is the way Irish football should be going. I think they need to be planning for something like this, and for planning for who is going to be the next manager after Stephen Kenny, after the European qualifiers, or ideally after qualification. But that needs to be part of the plan. And I think kind of getting, having some knee-jerk reaction and saying, right, let's get in Sam Allardyce or whoever to get some results. That's not really going to change the mood. And I think Stephen Kenny has done enough in previous games, and it may happen again against Scotland, that there's been enough for people to feel, right, we're enjoying this in a way that we haven't enjoyed Irish football matches for a long time. Because the run of disappointing results does predates Stephen Kenny too, and the run of watching Ireland and watching Ireland play in kind of grim. If you'd offered me that beforehand, I'd have bitten your hand off style football matches. That was, I would say, a lot worse, and had no long-term plan, except. And again, you could argue if this is the right way or the wrong way, but I would say that was the wrong way. Had no long-term plan except let's scrape a result, whatever way it is, and move on. Whereas Stephen Kenny, at his best, is looking to do something a lot more than that. I would say that the last two performances, it's been hard to glimpse what that is, and that is the problem.
Dion, if you assume that Stephen is, for the moment, safe in the job, and look, anecdotally at matches and online, certainly you hear a lot of people saying, maybe he needs to change the tactics, change the system. Look, that's a difficult question to answer, because, as Ger said earlier, it's difficult to know what the alternative to the system is. But I mean, looking at it from your own point of view at the minute, do you stick or twist with this tactical thing? Is it too far gone, or can he turn around now and kind of maybe try something else?
I think he can always try something else. I think we saw last night the difference. I do think ultimately a lot of it, there are tactical variations that he can do, but ultimately the problem for Ireland does come down to again the same. And this is when you come back to how long have you got. It comes down to the players we have now. You saw the difference Jason Knight made yesterday compared to not being in the team against Armenia, and that would seem to have been a mistake not to play him. Looking at how he played in previous games as well, when you think of just the impact Knight has made since he's been involved is significant. So that seemed like, I don't think we have enough quality players to kind of whether he was pacing and whether he was thinking we have a lot of matches, I don't know. But I think he's a player that makes a difference. So ultimately, the tactical differences, obviously, midfield being overrun is something that is an issue, and that is something that needs to be addressed. But equally, who is going to actually do that in a way that is really, that makes a significant difference to the tactics, and that is the problem. I think that is Ireland's problem. And if you look at, say, Ukraine's game against Wales, you look at Jack Grealish even playing for England. The minute those words are coming out of my mouth, why did I say that? But you look at the difference one player makes, and I think, again, we can talk an awful lot about what Stephen Kenny is trying to do, and I think it is the right thing he's trying to do, but the absence of star quality in the Ireland team is as much as anything else the difference between between good results and bad results.
Like, we had star quality on the sideline as well not too long ago, Dion, in Anthony Barry, who we touched on at the start of the show this morning as well. Like, we're looking on with envy now at Belgium, who've managed to nab him from us, and as we mentioned earlier, they won 6-1 against Poland last night. Like, is it too facetious to maybe look at Anthony Barry's exit and the results that have happened since as coincidental, or is there something there?
I think to look at Belgium's results and go, my God, what a genius Anthony Barry is a stretch. I think it really is a stretch. Like, look at the players Belgium have. I think that's the key thing, rather than saying, my God, he worked wonders with Ireland, and now he's working wonders with a Belgium team with De Bruyne. I'm looking at Hazard, Tielemans. There's it's not comparing like for like. I don't think we can put Belgium up, put Belgium in the kind of Anthony Barry, the pro Anthony Barry section. But I would say that clearly he had an idea. What you hear from people close to the Ireland team is that he was very, he was a significant presence, and he had significant ideas in terms of how Ireland were going to play. Equally, it wasn't like we're going back to for 3 years now since Ireland won a competitive match at home. That also encompasses the Anthony Barry era. So it's not as if we have just come out of a golden age. I think I think there are lots of reasons. It's possibly one factor, and I think in that strange dynamic that makes up football teams, coaches who players feel are actually delivering a message they like and they understand can make a huge difference. I'm not saying that that's not happening now, but clearly it was happening with Barry. But I also feel like it is conceivable that in the game against Scotland, having experienced these two bad results, I think there's something in, like, the Ireland team is still such a fragile kind of thing that it's likely to kind of, there's every chance you get some kind of response, some kind of heroic 1-1 against Scotland is on the cards. And again, you go back to some of these matches, you go back to the Serbia game where we had a heroic 1-1. Bazunu was really the difference, was the player who kept us in it.
Just if you're in the camp, right, and you're thinking about the draw is going to be in October, we're going to be in the third pot, so it's going to be tricky. Top two teams automatically qualify, and there's still some hope for those teams who finished third in their group by way of playoff. So it's not dead. It's still possible that we can go to the Euros, even though the campaign hasn't even started. The draw hasn't been made.
So
it's
positive,
not dead.
Jerry. You're like it's like Rob Shepherd with Graham Taylor in The Impossible Job. Like you're really bringing pessimism to a new level. The draw hasn't even happened, and you're saying we're not out of it yet.
Exactly. But the one thing that you might be hopeful about is that perhaps, by that stage, Bazunu will be playing week in, week out for Southampton. That would be big. So that he's your number one. And then a few other players are playing week in, week out football, ideally in the Championship and some of them in the Premier League. And maybe OTBAM needs to be in the starting lineup. I don't know. Is there enough in the personnel that are missing, Adam Ida, Andrew Omobamidele, that you can say when the heat comes on in the qualifiers that the team will look a little bit different, and that this stuff is ultimately still, while it's a replacement for friendlies and there is something good on offer at the end of it, these are still friendlies, and so we should maybe rein in the pessimism a bit.
Well, again, that comes back to how the tournament was talked up. I don't think there's any huge enthusiasm for the Nations League. I think somebody was trying to persuade me that we wouldn't miss the World Cup in June because we'd have the Nations League, and I think that's clearly not the case. It isn't something that people get very excited by. It's a bit like the FA Cup, though, in that it's a tournament that actually can frame that can be used for to kind of drive a case against, or to shape a case against a team or a manager, and whilst getting kind of reasonable or average results are not going to excite very many people. Losing as has been happening with Ireland is going to kind of make it harder for Stephen Kenny, and I think that is the case. So I do think Ireland, a result against Scotland, a victory against Scotland would be quite important for him at this stage. Ultimately, you're right. Like when people will be more engaged by the qualifiers. We will go into it with the that borderline pessimism, optimism that you lay out. And there are many opportunities to qualify for it, as you said. Ireland missed out through a playoff the last time. It is a competition now that even teams where Ireland are, and I think this is one of the things that has been dawning on people very slowly, is just how far Ireland have fallen. So when we say, you shouldn't lose to Armenia, shouldn't lose to Luxembourg, shouldn't lose to Ukrainian side that's made 10 changes and has just lost out in a game that was far more important to them. You keep coming up against, well, why shouldn't we? What have Ireland got? What is Ireland? What have Ireland got to be so certain that they actually should be getting these results? And you look through you look through what we have, and it's very hard to make any case. Now, when you talk about players playing regularly, playing in the championship, that will all make a difference. I don't think that stuff really. Like Bazunu has, I think Bazunu playing in the Premier League would be great for him. I don't think that stuff ultimately matters that much in international football. I think it's you can, as Ukraine have kind of demonstrated, because everyone was like, well, Ukraine are before their World Cup, people felt that they would really, against Scotland, it was like, oh, they'll struggle because they've been playing. Like, there are factors outside the kind of cut and thrust of club football that make a difference for international football. So I wouldn't bet a lot on kind of, right, we've got players playing in the championship. I think it's about what Stephen Kenny does with the players when he gets them together, and that's why Ireland. It's actually a reason why Ireland should feel some kind of optimism, because there is nobody in international football really to fear. But equally, when it doesn't happen, the questions are really best addressed to the manager and to within the camp, rather than saying, oh, there's been a long gap between the end of the championship and these games, or the players aren't playing at a higher level. Ultimately, international football isn't really about those things. It's about what you can get a bunch of average players to do against usually another bunch of average players.
I think your point about the FA Cup being used as a stick to beat managers with at certain times is very apt, because what happens if the results in the next two games aren't significantly better is that almost from the start of the qualifying campaign, every match is a little bit of a referendum, to the point where if it becomes clear we're not going to qualify, or if there's a disaster along the way, then the calls and the clamour for him to go will be very difficult to ignore. So that's why these games are very, very big games. It's like just to buy a bit of calm and buy a bit of peace and try and change the mood music around at the moment, because by talking up this competition, everybody is saying, okay, this is your team now, let's see what you've got. And at the moment, the signs are really bad. So there's a lot riding on the team selection for the weekend against Scotland. Is there anything in the current group that you would do to change, apart from, I don't know, is there start Obafemi? Does that make a difference?
I think it would. I think it could make a difference. It's worth a shot. I think like Jason Knight obviously made a difference, and hopefully he will start again. I think, you know, there are, you know, the injuries, the absences are gonna be a problem for Ireland at this stage. Scotland, Scotland aren't very good. Like, that is, you know, and it is going to be. I think we might be. Anyone who's seen Scotland play would kind of come away from it kind of thinking, God, Scotland really are a poor side. But I think at the same time, we might again come face to face with our own limitations when we play them. I just go back to that point about whether I guess you're like that these, you know, a couple of bad results will add to the pressure. I would like to think that there is now some sense that there's not much, like, it's pretty fatalistic, but, you know, there is not much point in getting rid of Stephen Kenny, no matter what happens. Like, you know, he's going to go into the European Championship. He's going to go into the qualifiers. At that stage, you may as well allow him to continue for the duration of them, because, again, unless there is some outstanding alternative, I don't see what the point of doing that is, because, like, you know, what are we harking back to? This is it's a kind of negative argument in favor of Stephen Kenny, but and it's the only one you can really make after a couple of results like this. But what are we harking back to? Like the second Mick McCarthy era, is that the golden age? You know, there isn't a lot really
where the team is so bad that they get hammered in every game and they eventually do qualify for a tournament. You know, like, I agree with you. Really, fundamentally, it's just that very difficult to make any case other than the same story.
Other than it could be a lot. You know, it's a bit like you know, it's like the Fawlty Towers, like Major in the Fawlty Towers. No, when they say this is the worst hotel they've ever stayed in, and he says no, there's a place in Bournemouth, or whatever the line is. Like, it's a bit like that. Like, there is a worse version. There is a worse version of this Ireland team. There is a parallel universe.
It's Northern Ireland.
Well, there's a parallel universe where things are a lot worse, and that's the
Hooray!
best. On a day like today, that's the best case you can make.
Shane, you'd one more. We've time for one more.
Yeah, no, just thinking, Dion, like, I know hindsight's obviously 2020, but we were talking earlier about, you know, the fact that, I guess, Stephen Kenny at the start of the Nations League started talking about the fact that the ambition was to go on and win this group. And you can look back now and say, you know, did he make the right decision in saying that? Is it, you know, a positive thing to have great ambitions and lofty ambitions for this Irish team? Or was that setting the bar maybe a little bit too high, and expectations maybe for the fans and the media at least a little bit too high?
Again, I think he didn't have, given the way things had gone, he probably had to do something like that. I think having ambition is something that is a part of Stephen Kenny's makeup. You know, whatever job he's done, I think that's something, and I think that's something we want from an Ireland manager, because the alternative is, you know, the trap, like we don't have the players, reductionist view that once we don't have the players, we can never actually aspire to do anything. Like, my argument would be that we don't have the players, but there aren't a lot of countries that do have the players. So we can actually aspire to try and do something, as Stephen Kenny's teams have done at their best, that actually excite people and make you think that something good is coming. I feel that given where he started, given how Ireland had kind of transitioned out of that into something encouraging, he had to kind of maybe talk it up. And I think it's a genuine feeling with him too. I think he does believe that, and I think that's a noble thing and a worthwhile thing to have. But equally now, on the back of the last two results, you could say, "Oh God, why didn't he talk us down?" I'm not sure if Ireland had lost to Armenia and then Ukraine. I think no matter what, people would be complaining or would be rightly annoyed about it. And if Stephen Kenny had come into them saying, "Look, we don't have the players. We're going to do our best. hopefully we come away from these games with something. People wouldn't necessarily go, well, fair play to him. He knows that we're not up to much. They'd want something more. So I think it's the right. I think it's the only thing he could do. And I do, as I say, I think it is actually what he believes, which is the most important thing. But there does need now to be some evidence or something for people to grasp hold of. And I just think it hasn't been there. One of the things that's characterized a lot of the matches, even the ones that have been a little bit disappointing under Kenny, has been that kind of sense of, okay, we're behind this team and we're still, the supporters are really kind of pro what Stephen Kenny is trying to do. I think there needed to be something last night to kind of keep that sense of optimism or hopefulness going, and it wasn't there.